I didn't know it yet. I was standing under bright white lights, my name echoing through the auditorium, people clapping, cameras flashing. Congratulations. We are so proud of you. That's what my mother whispered when I stepped off the stage. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. I didn't realize it was the same smile she used when she lied. I remember gripping my diploma so tightly my fingers hurt, because for once, I thought everything made sense. Years of pressure, silence, being the investment child. All of it finally paid off. Or at least, that's what they wanted me to believe. We took pictures outside. My father adjusted my gown like he always did, pretending to be the supportive parent. My mother kept checking her phone. Not casually, constantly, like she was waiting for something to be confirmed. At one point, she turned away, whispered into the phone, "Is everything clear?" I didn't think much of it. I should have. We went to dinner that night. Expensive place. Reserved table. Too perfect. Too rehearsed. My father kept talking about new beginnings. My mother kept saying things like, "You're independent now. You won't need us like before." At the time, it sounded like pride. Now, I know it was preparation. Around 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in me shifted. Just slightly. I stepped outside. Answered. A calm male voice said, "Hi. I'm calling regarding the property transfer. We just need confirmation that all personal belongings have been cleared from the house before final possession tomorrow." I froze. What house? A pause. Then confusion on his end. The address on file, your residence. My throat went dry. No, there must be a mistake. Another pause. Longer this time. Then carefully. You were listed as a dependent occupant. I assumed you were informed. That was the moment. The exact moment. Everything changed without anything visibly changing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even react. I just said, "Thank you for calling," and hung up. Then I went back inside, sat down, smiled, finished my meal, listened to my parents talk about how proud they were, how everything was going to be better now. I didn't confront them. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even when I drove back home. Because there was no home anymore. When I arrived, the front gate was open. Wide open. Like the house was already letting me go. There was a sold sign hanging over the old for sale. Fresh. Bright. Aggressive. I walked inside. Empty. Completely empty. No couch. No dining table. No framed photos. No curtains. Not even the small crack on the wall I used to trace as a kid felt the same. My room was erased. Not packed. Not moved. Erased. Like I never existed there. That's when it hit me. Not as pain, but as clarity. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. This was planned. Carefully. Strategically. They waited for the one day I would be distracted. The one day I wouldn't question anything. The one day I would be too busy celebrating to notice they were closing a deal behind my back. I sat on the floor, right in the middle of that empty house. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt underestimated. Because they thought I would react. They thought I would cry, beg, fight. They thought I would become emotional and lose control. They forgot something. I learned from them. So I stood up, wiped my face, and quietly walked out. I didn't call them. Not immediately. I let them enjoy it. Let them believe their plan worked perfectly. Let them relax. That's the thing about people who betray you. They always get comfortable too early. 3 days later, my mother finally called. Her voice was soft, careful, like she was rehearsing guilt. Sweetheart, we were going to tell you. I didn't let her finish. I know. Silence. Then she switched tones slightly. More defensive now. It was the right decision. The market is at its peak. We got an offer we couldn't refuse. There it was. The real reason. Not necessity. Not struggle. Profit. I said nothing. Just listened. Let her talk. Let her justify. Let her expose herself. Besides, you're grown now. You'll move on. This is how life works. I smiled. She couldn't see it, but I did, because in that moment, she unknowingly gave me everything I needed. Information, confidence, and most importantly, time. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just said, I understand. That's when she relaxed. I could hear it. That small shift in her breathing. Relief. That was her mistake. Because while they were celebrating their smart financial move, I started asking questions. Quietly. Carefully. Who bought the house? How fast was the closing? What clauses were rushed? Who handled the paperwork? And then I found it, buried deep inside the transaction records. A detail so small, most people would ignore it. But I didn't, because I wasn't looking emotionally anymore. I was looking strategically. The house wasn't sold in a normal transaction. It was a rapid close, cash-heavy, minimal inspection period, and one specific clause stood out. Seller guarantees no undisclosed occupancy claims. I smiled again, because they had signed something they didn't fully understand. And for the first time since graduation, I felt something stronger than betrayal. Control. But I didn't act immediately. No, I waited, because revenge, when rushed, looks desperate. And I wasn't desperate anymore. I was patient. Weeks passed. My parents moved into their new, downsized luxury apartment. They posted pictures. Smiling, relaxed, victorious. People congratulated them. Smart move in this market. Perfect timing. I watched everything, liked a few posts, stayed silent. Because silence makes people think they've won. Then one evening, I received an email from the new homeowner, confused, concerned. Hi, I think there may be a legal issue with the property you used to live in. I didn't open it immediately. I let it sit, unread, for 2 hours. Then I opened it, slowly, calmly. And when I finished reading, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered to myself, now it begins. Because what my parents didn't realize was that in their rush to sell the house, they didn't just erase my childhood. They created a problem that only I could solve. And I wasn't going to solve it for free. I picked up my phone, scrolled to my mother's contact, hovered for a second, then pressed call. She answered instantly. Of course she did. Hello. I smiled, softly, calmly, completely in control. Mom, pause. I think we need to talk about the house you sold. A silence on the other end, heavy, uncomfortable. Good. Because for the first time, they weren't in control of the story anymore. And they had no idea what I had just uncovered. Her breathing changed, Not loud, not dramatic, just a slight pause. Like her brain was trying to calculate how much I knew. How what do you mean? She asked. Soft voice.
Careful tone.
But I could hear it.
Fear.
I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I said, I got an email today from the buyer. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she tried to recover. Oh, that must be some confusion. These things happen in property deals. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. You signed a rapid close agreement, right? I said. Flat. Neutral. Silence. Complete silence. Then my father's voice appeared in the background. What is she saying? She covered the phone, but not well enough. I heard everything.
Good.
Let them both listen. I think you should check clause 8.3, I continued. Slowly, carefully, like I was reading a bedtime story. My father took the phone. His tone was different. Less emotional. More aggressive. What exactly are you trying to say? I leaned back, closed my eyes, and smiled. I'm saying you guaranteed something that wasn't true. What wasn't true, he snapped. That there were no unresolved occupancy claims. Silence again, but this time, it wasn't confusion. It was realization. Because now they were remembering, not the sale, but what they rushed through to complete it. You moved my things out, I continued. You emptied the house, erased my room.
Pause.
But you never legally removed me. I could hear my mother whisper, Oh my God. There it was, the crack. You listed me as a dependent occupant on multiple official records, I said calmly. Bank statements, insurance, even your own tax filings. My father tried to interrupt. That doesn't. It does. I cut him off. Same calm tone. No emotion. Because emotional people lose control. And I wasn't losing anything anymore. It means, I continued, you sold a property while legally acknowledging someone still had residential association. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. And the buyer, I added softly, is now facing a potential claim. That's when my father's tone changed. Not aggressive anymore. Not confident.
Controlled panic.
What do you want? He asked. Straight to the point.
Good.
He was learning. I didn't answer immediately. I let the question sit between us. Because when people ask that question, they're already losing. What do I want? I repeated slowly. Then I exhaled.
Softly.
I want you to understand something first. My voice dropped. Not louder, just deeper. You didn't just sell a house. Pause. You sold leverage. Another silence. And now, I added, I own it. My mother started crying. Not loudly, just enough to sound real. But I didn't react. Because I've learned something about tears. They don't always mean regret. Sometimes they mean fear. We did this for you, she said suddenly. We wanted to give you a better future. No, I said softly, and for the first time, there was a hint of something in my voice. Not anger, not pain.
Clarity.
You did this for convenience. Silence. Then I shifted.
Slightly. Strategically.
The buyer emailed me because their lawyer flagged the inconsistency. I said, they're confused, concerned.
Pause.
And very motivated to fix it quickly. My father spoke again. What are you planning? I smiled, not because I was enjoying it, but because I had already planned everything. Nothing impulsive, I said. Don't worry. Then I added, I've already responded to the buyer. Silence.
Sharp.
Immediate. What did you say? He asked. I told him, I'm open to resolving the issue. Another pause. For a price. My mother gasped. My father didn't speak. Because now they understood. I wasn't reacting. I was negotiating. You wouldn't do that to us, my mother whispered. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I almost remembered who I used to be. Then I opened them again. I already did, I said. Silence. Then my father spoke.
Low. Tense.
How much? I didn't answer.
Not yet.
Because this wasn't about money. Not really. This isn't a number you can just pay and forget, I said. It's a process. What process? He demanded. I leaned forward slightly, even though he couldn't see me. The same one you used on me, I said.
Pause.
Control. They didn't respond.
Good.
Because now they were starting to understand this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about power. I'm meeting the buyer tomorrow, I added casually, and their legal team. That shook them. I could hear it. You went that far? My father said. I go as far as I need to, I replied. Silence again. Then my mother said something unexpected, something soft, broken. We can fix this together. I almost smiled, not out of joy, but because she still didn't understand. This isn't something you fix, I said quietly. It's something you created. And then I ended the call. The next day, I walked into a glass office building.
Modern.
Cold. Professional. The buyer was already there. Mid-40s. Confident.
But stressed.
His lawyer sat beside him. Sharp eyes. Observing everything. I didn't rush. I didn't explain. I just sat down, placed a thin folder on the table, and slid it toward them. Inside was everything. Every document. Every inconsistency. Every legal thread they didn't even realize was loose. The lawyer opened it, flipped through, then stopped, looked at me, and for the first time, someone said it out loud. This shouldn't have passed compliance. I smiled, just slightly. No, I said, it shouldn't have. The buyer leaned forward. What do you want to make this go away? Straight to the point. Again. I liked him already, but I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked something else. Do you know why they sold it so fast? He frowned. Because the market is high, he said. I shook my head, slowly. No, because they thought they could outrun consequences. Silence filled the room. Then I leaned back. Calm, composed, in control, and said the one thing that changed everything. I'm not here to take your money. Pause. I'm here to take the house back. The buyer froze. The lawyer stopped writing. And for the first time since this started, the power shifted completely. Because what they didn't know was that this wasn't just a negotiation. It was a takeover. And I had already made a move they hadn't even noticed yet. The room didn't move, but everything inside it shifted. The buyer leaned back slowly, like he was recalculating the entire situation in real time. His lawyer didn't speak, but I could see it in her eyes. She was no longer looking at me like a problem. She was looking at me like a variable. A takeover, the buyer finally said, not mocking, not dismissive, careful. I nodded once.
Slow.
Controlled. I'm not here to fight you, I said. I'm here to offer you an exit before this becomes a liability you can't contain.
His jaw tightened.
Not anger.
Pressure.
Explain, he said.
So I did.
But not everything. Not yet. You purchased a property under the assumption that it was clean, I said. It isn't. Pause. There's a legally recognized occupant tied to multiple financial and residential records. I let that sit, then added softly, me. The lawyer finally spoke.
Calm. Precise.
And your claim? I looked directly at her, held eye contact just long enough. I haven't filed it yet. That sentence did more damage than any accusation, because now they knew I was choosing restraint. And why haven't you? She asked. I smiled.
Slight.
Controlled. Because I prefer leverage over chaos. Silence. Heavy. The buyer exhaled.
Long. Slow.
So, what exactly are you proposing? There it was again. The question people ask when they realize they don't have control anymore. I slid another document across the table.
Thicker this time.
More detailed. This, I said. The lawyer opened it. Brows moved. Pages turned faster. Then slower. Then stopped. She looked at me.
Really looked this time.
This is pre-structured, she said. I nodded. Of course it is. The buyer leaned in. What is it? She answered before I could. It's a reacquisition framework. Silence dropped like weight. She's not trying to reverse the sale. The lawyer continued slowly. She's trying to replace the sellers in the transaction. The buyer's eyes flicked to me.
Sharp now.
Focused. You want to step into their position? He asked. Yes, I said simply. And in return, he pressed. I leaned back, crossed my hands calmly. You keep the deal, I said. You keep the property. Pause. But under corrected terms. His expression tightened. What does that mean? It means, I said softly, that the price changes. Silence. Because now it was clear. I wasn't undoing anything. I was rewriting it. The lawyer flipped to the financial page again. Her eyes narrowed slightly. This valuation, she said quietly, is significantly lower than what they paid. I nodded. Because now it includes risk. The buyer let out a small, disbelieving breath. You expect me to accept a lower valuation after I already paid a premium?
I didn't react.
I expect you to choose between two outcomes, I said. Then I leaned forward, just slightly. 1.
Pause.
You proceed as is. Deal stays intact. Except now, there's a legal claim attached to your property. A claim that can delay, complicate, or even freeze your usage. I let that sink in, then continued. 2. Pause. You restructure the deal, with me replacing the original sellers, and eliminate the risk before it becomes public. The buyer didn't speak, because he understood. This wasn't a threat.
It was math.
The lawyer closed the file slowly.
Carefully.
You've already initiated something, haven't you? She asked. I smiled. Not officially, I said. Then added, but enough to make this conversation necessary. Silence again, but this time it felt different. Heavier, sharper. Because now
They weren't evaluating me.
they were calculating loss. The buyer stood up, walked toward the window, hands behind his back. City stretched below us.
Busy.
Unaware. How did your parents miss this? He asked quietly. I almost laughed, but I didn't. They didn't miss it, I said. Pause. They ignored it. He turned slightly, looked at me. And you didn't warn them? I held his gaze.
No.
That answer told him everything. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. He walked back to the table, sat down slowly. What's your number? He asked. I tilted my head slightly. It's not just a number, I said. Then I slid one final page forward. This is... He looked. His eyes widened just enough. Not dramatic, but real. Because what he saw wasn't just money. It was structure. Installments, ownership layers, future clauses, and one specific line that made everything clear. Original sellers remain financially liable for post-sale discrepancies. His head lifted, slowly. You're not just replacing them, he said. You're binding them. I nodded once. Yes. Silence. Because now, the real twist surfaced. This wasn't about the house. It never was. It was about shifting consequence. From me, back to them. The buyer leaned back again.
Different now.
Not defensive. Impressed. You're not asking me to lose money, he said slowly. You're asking me to move the risk. I didn't answer, because he was finally saying it himself. That's the thing about control. The best moves are the ones your opponent explains for you. He looked at his lawyer. She nodded slightly. Then he looked back at me. And what happens to your parents? He asked. I paused. Not because I didn't know, but because timing matters. They faced the agreement they signed, I said quietly.
Pause.
With full understanding this time. Silence. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. Not wide, not obvious, but real. You're good, he said. I didn't respond, because compliments are distractions. I'll need 24 hours, he added. I stood up. Take 12, I said. Then I picked up my bag, walked to the door, stopped. And without turning back, I said one last thing. If you take longer,
Pause.
I move forward without you. Then I left. That night, my phone didn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, messages, voicemails, all from one place, home, or what used to be. I didn't answer. Not yet, because they were finally feeling it. Uncertainty, loss of control,
Fear.
the same things they handed to me without hesitation. I sat in silence, phone in my hand, screen lighting up again and again. Then finally, a message came through. Not from my mother, not from my father. From a number I didn't expect. Their lawyer. I opened it slowly. Read the first line. And felt something shift. For the first time, not control, not satisfaction.
Surprise.
Because the message didn't say what I expected. It said, "We need to meet immediately. There's something your parents didn't tell you, and it changes everything." I stared at the screen, heartbeat steady, mind already moving. Because if there was one thing I understood now, it was this. There was always another layer. And I had just found it. I didn't reply immediately, not because I was confused, but because I've learned something dangerous about truth. The moment you rush toward it, you lose control of how it unfolds. So I let the message sit, unread, even though I had already read it. 3 hours. That's how long I made them wait. Then I replied with one line. Location. The address came within seconds.
Of course it did.
People always respond faster when they're afraid. The office was smaller this time. Not glass and polished confidence like before. This one felt defensive. Closed blinds. Muted lighting. A room built for damage control. Their lawyer stood when I entered. Different energy from before. Less authority. More urgency. "Thank you for coming," he said. I didn't sit immediately. I scanned the room. Not for people. For signals. One file on the table.
Thick.
Unlabeled. Interesting. What changed? I asked. No greetings. No small talk. He exhaled, like he had been holding something in for too long. "Your parents didn't disclose everything," he said. "Of course they didn't." "That doesn't surprise me," I replied calmly. He hesitated. That was new. Then he pushed the file toward me. "This will." I opened it, slowly, not because I was nervous, but because timing controls perception. First page. Property transfer documents. Nothing new. Second page. Bank confirmations. Expected. Third page. Something different. A secondary agreement. Dated 2 weeks before my graduation. My eyes paused, just for a second, then continued. Clause 4.1. Future claim contingencies transferred to third-party liability buffer. I read it again, slower. Then I looked up. "They insured the risk," I said. The lawyer nodded. "Not just insured," he added quietly. "They transferred it." Silence. Because now, everything shifted. "They anticipated a claim," I said. "Yes." "And they protected themselves." "Yes." I leaned back slightly. "And you're telling me this now, why?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said something else. Turn to the last page. I did. And that's when I saw it. A name. Not mine. Not theirs. A third party. A holding entity. And beneath it, a signature. Familiar. Too familiar. My breath didn't change. My hands didn't shake. But something inside me went quiet. Because I recognized it. Not as a name, but as a pattern. The same entity that had been quietly appearing in multiple transactions I researched over the past year. The same entity that specialized in absorbing legal risk for a price. The same entity I had already started investigating before any of this happened. I looked back at the lawyer. You're not telling me something? I said softly. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that made everything sharper. They didn't just sell the house. Pause. They sold the problem. Silence. Because now, my leverage wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't sitting with the buyer. It wasn't sitting with my parents. It was sitting somewhere else. And that somewhere else was already prepared. They expected you to react, he continued. They expected you to find the inconsistency. I didn't speak. They built a buffer specifically for you. Now I smiled, not out of amusement, but recognition. Because for the first time, I wasn't ahead. I was matched. I closed the file.
Gently.
Then why call me? I asked. He held my gaze. Because they made one mistake, he said. Of course they did. They always do. What mistake? I asked. He leaned forward slightly. They assumed you would attack emotionally. Pause. They didn't prepare for you to think structurally. Silence. And that changes everything, he added. I stood up slowly, picked up the file, walked toward the window. City lights flickering below. Same as yesterday.
But now,
Different game. They transferred the liability, I said quietly, to a third party.
pause.
But they didn't remove the origin. He didn't interrupt. They created distance. I continued, but not immunity. I turned back. And distance can be traced. His expression shifted, just slightly. Good. Do you know what this entity actually does? I asked. He nodded. They absorb risk. I smiled. No.
Pause.
They redistribute it. Silence. Because now, the real structure revealed itself. They didn't protect themselves, I said. They delayed the impact. I walked back to the table, placed the file down. And delay, pause, is something I control very well. The lawyer didn't speak, because he understood now. This wasn't over. It had just evolved. I pulled out my phone, opened a contact, one I had saved months ago, during a completely unrelated investigation. Or, at least, that's what I thought back then. I pressed call. The lawyer watched, didn't interrupt. The line connected. A calm voice answered. Risk Management Division. I smiled.
Soft.
Focused. Hi, I said. I believe we have a shared interest now. Pause. I'd like to discuss asset redistribution. Silence on the other end. Then, I was expecting your call. I ended it. Looked back at the lawyer. They didn't just sell the house, I said. Pause. They invited me into a bigger game. I picked up my bag, walked to the door.
Stopped.
And this time, I did turn back. Tell them something for me, I said. He nodded. I held his gaze.
Calm.
Cold. Certain. They didn't take my home.
Pause.
They gave me their entire structure. I walked out. No anger. No noise. No closure. Because some endings don't explode. They expand. Weeks later, the buyer finalized the restructured deal. Under my terms. Quietly. My parents never posted again. No pictures. No updates. No victories. Just silence. And somewhere, inside a system they thought they controlled. My name was no longer listed as a dependent. It was listed as something else. Primary.